The federal government is looking to crack down on hate crimes in Canada.
One of the great promises of Canada is the ability of our citizens to live freely in their communities, regardless of the color of their skin, the God they pray to, or the person that they love. Frankly, the prevalence of hate crimes in this country that steal those freedoms are something that should shock the conscience of every Canadian.
Justice Minister Sean Fraser tabled new legislation today called the Combating Hate Act. If passed, the act would amend the criminal code to make hate-motivated crime a specific offense. It would also create a definition of hatred to clarify what constitutes a hate crime. The act would criminalize the use of hate and terrorism-related symbols that promote hate against an identifiable group of people. Such symbols would include the use of a swastika to promote hate against Jewish people, for example. It would also make it a crime to intimidate or obstruct people from accessing places of worship, schools, and community centers. And it would make it easier to prosecute for those charges by removing a requirement to seek consent from an Attorney General. Yasir Naqvi is the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of International Trade, but also a former Provincial Attorney General here in Ontario, and he joins me now to discuss this. Yasir Naqvi, thanks for coming in. It's good to see you, sir.
Thank you, David.
So this legislation makes hate-motivated crime its own specific offence with much higher sentences than the base offence would be. Why did you feel it was necessary when there are other laws in place that criminalize hateful acts?
Well, I think, first of all, as the Minister said, we have a serious concern, an issue in Canada right now. We have seen a significant spike in hate-motivated crimes. Whether they're Jewish Canadians or Muslim Canadians, Asian Canadians, we are seeing some really significant instances, and we have to do everything in our capacity to deter people to engage in hateful speech, to make sure that people are protected and are able to practice their faith, their cultures, and live peacefully. And therefore, we have taken a fairly robust approach in engaging and consulting with communities across the country in coming up with this bill to make it to put certain offenses that will allow to really combat hate in our communities. And one of those measures is to have a specific hate-motivated crime. It's a hybrid offense, meaning that it could be layered upon, for example, let's say on an assault charge, where it could be demonstrated that that assault happened because of a particular person's identity, that you really identify the person for who they are, and this, of course, will result in a higher sentence, because we want to send the message that that kind of criminality is unacceptable.
So is it just for the denunciation component of that, like a harsher sentence, obviously, but an assault is an assault, like the victim physically suffers the same damage, to use your example, whatever the motivation is, but is it that you just want to denounce the hate component of it?
Well, I think the impact is even greater on the victim. If a woman who wears hijab gets assaulted, or the hijab of her head is ripped, it's an assault, no doubt, but there's a motivation, there's a hateful motivation, or a firebombing of a synagogue. Yes, it's damaging a property, but it's a place of worship, and somebody may have targeted that because it's a Jewish place of worship. So there's an added element of intensity around it, and we want to make sure that the criminal code takes that into account.
Right, I gotcha. That's a helpful explanation. Okay, so this law, though, this proposed law, it also seeks to create criminal offenses for the intimidation of people and the obstruction of people at places of worship, at, say, a Jewish day school or at a community center. How do you balance intimidation and obstruction with, say, the right to protest? Because this isn't like a bubble law that stops the protest from happening. It criminalizes how the protest would be conducted, is my read of it. Help me understand how you calibrate the analysis of that.
That's a really good question, and I think we have to start with the most important foundational principle that expression of speech is a charter right. Peaceful protest is also a protected right, and this legislation categorically protects that. If you're communicating, if you're creating information about a particular cause, that is protected. What we are trying to do is to also protect the competing right, which is somebody's right to attend their place of worship in a peaceful way. So if somebody is intentionally obstructing access to a place of worship, that is what we're trying to capture. Or somebody is causing fear through their speech, which makes it fearful for someone to be able to go to their place of worship or their community centers so that they can practice their faith or their culture. That is what we're trying to capture here. So it does not prevent people from expressing themselves peacefully. What it's doing is looking at the intention. If your intention is to cause intimidation or obstruct, then you'll be caught under this legislation.
The obstruction one seems more clear to me. I mean, if you block all the doors and you don't create a pathway for people to get in, then you are clearly intentionally obstructing. The intimidation one, though, is less clear to me because you talked about intention. There's intention and there's impact, right? You could be going there and the protest in the organizer's view could be peaceful, but it could still be intimidating for people who have to walk through a hostile crowd, even if there is a pathway. How do you make that assessment? Who makes that assessment in the moment? Is it the police? Is it the prosecutors? What's the threshold?
Yeah, so I think we have to remember the intention piece is always very important in criminal law, right? You need two elements. You need the act, but the intent behind that act as well. And that's why the willful part in you will see that language appears is creates that standard that you actually intended to create fear. You are targeting an identifiable group, and so it's not your own perception. It's something that has to be demonstrated that you plan to do this. You plan to target somebody because of they are part of an identifiable group, and to create an environment that they do not feel safe to attend a place of worship.
Right, but is there a specific action that meets the threshold of intimidation, right? Because if there's a protest, let's say, at a synagogue or at a mosque, the actions in and of themselves may not be threatening, but people could still feel intimidated, right?
David,
So how do you balance
this
that?
is, David, where there's difficulty that we cannot be really speculative or be hypothetical. It all varies from a particular incident to particular incident. That's why we always have to make sure that our police officers are properly trained who will be applying this law. Of course, our crowns who have to then prove in a court of law if charges are laid have to be appropriately trained as well, and that is a very important piece from an administration of justice perspective. And I have some experience, as you mentioned, as the former Attorney General. But I would not go around saying this scenario will be caught and that's not caught, because each scenario is different.
Well, on that though, each scenario is different, and I guess the assessment of it could be different. And you're a former Attorney General. Under the laws that exist today, to apply a hate crime component to a charge, prosecutors need to seek approval from the attorneys general in their district, in their jurisdiction. This takes it away. Why? I mean, it was there for a reason, I guess, on consistency and because of the seriousness of it. You're now downloading it directly to the Crown, to the prosecutors. Why are you taking that step?
So I've got some direct experiences there. So when I was the Attorney General of Ontario, I actually laid 4 charges, hate-related charges against 3 individuals in different instances. And I found it very odd at that time that as the Attorney General of the province, I wasn't able to delegate that responsibility. I had to personally, as the Attorney General, decide whether there was enough sufficient evidence for willful promotion. There's no other provision in the criminal code that requires that kind of thing. I think the reason why that was put into criminal code before is because the case law was not clear. There were fewer incidents of hate. We did not understand the balance between freedom of expression and hateful speech. I believe times have changed. I think we have a far sophisticated understanding. We are seeing far too many incidents of hate. From an administration of justice perspective, I think by giving that authority to not require the Attorney General to directly consent, we will allow our police and Crown to move faster and make sure that people feel safe.
The Canadian Civil Liberties Association, though, they're concerned that this is being implemented in the wrong way. Essentially, it could criminalize unpopular and offensive speech rather than just hate speech. And how do you guarantee that doesn't happen if there is no sort of centralized assessment process like there was when it went to an Attorney General?
I think one important element in this bill is actually a definition of what is hate. We have not had that in our laws. It actually articulates that what we're talking about is vilification or detestation, not just disdain or dislike. That definition comes from Supreme Court jurisprudence, and it's been codified through this bill for the first time, which I think gives a little bit more assurance for our police and Crown to apply the law appropriately.
Okay, I want to squeeze in one more question because I've gone over time, but this also criminalizes the use of symbols, hate symbols that are designed to target a specific group. You give specific examples, the swastika, the SS, double lightning bolt. I mean, those make absolute sense. But how far does that go, for example, in terms of what would be considered a hate symbol and not? For example, with the contemporary protests, we see the Hamas flag, a designated terrorist organization in Canada. Is that a crime under this law?
So, first of all, the law actually has a list. So you mentioned Nazi symbols like swastika or the SS bowls.
Right.
And the other definition is around symbols relating to designated terrorist entities. Again, just as mere display is not sufficient. The law is this bill is very clear that it has to be willful promotion, that you are actually intend to use those symbols to express sort of the factors that makes that organization terrorist by, again, promoting those views and hateful. So that, again, intent part, the willful promotion part, is a key element of this bill.
So if someone shows up at a protest with a Hamas flag, should they expect to be arrested once these laws are passed?
Again, I want to be very careful because each fact is different and depends on
a Hamas flag at a protest outside a synagogue, for example.
What they're doing and how they're doing, and that assessment has to be made by the police. But the law is very clear that just a mere display is not what we're capturing, is the willful promotion, the use of that symbol to spread hate is what this bill is trying to capture.
Okay, and some people in this argument over the Middle East conflict have pointed to the keffiyeh, the Palestinian flag.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. Okay.
Absolutely not.
Okay, all right, but the Hamas flag is a gray area even under this law?
But Hamas is a listed entity. Proud Boys, for example, is a listed terrorist activity. So obviously their symbols have certain meaning, and if you're using the symbols to willfully promote the views of that organization, you may be in problem.
Okay, Yasir Naqvi, we appreciate you being here to explain the government's position on this. Yasir Naqvi, former Ontario Attorney General. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.